Hollywood fell victim to hackers over the weekend with private and sensitive photos of more than 100 celebrities making their way to the internet. Welcome to your Tuesday lunch break, everyone. I'm Tanya Rivero. Experts speculate weaknesses in Apple's iCloud are to blame, but the damage is done. How did hackers access these images, and what steps should people take to protect their data? We're joined now by Bob Stasio, Vice President of Threat Intelligence at Cyber IQ Services and a Truman National Security Fellow. Bob, thanks so much for being with us.
Thanks for having me.
So first of all, for those of us who aren't as familiar with how this works, how do hackers go about accessing data?
Well, I think in this case, there's probably a spectrum of methods, right? I think that there's a very simplistic method, but effective in this case where a hacker could potentially guess the password of the target or the victim by using information that's publicly available. And unfortunately, in a celebrity's case, this is widely known. So for example, if I want to try to gain access to an Apple ID account, it may ask me some personal questions if I forgot my password, such as what's your dog's name, what high school did you go to? Unfortunately for celebrities, that information is publicly available. So that's kind of on the more simplistic but effective end of the spectrum. And then in the middle, you may have a situation where hackers recovered usernames and passwords from other data breaches, so such as data breaches at Amazon or Target or wherever that may be, and they may reuse those passwords in this case as well. And then on the more complex side of the spectrum, you have an issue where hackers could potentially gain remote access to Apple servers. And I think that's a less likely scenario and probably not what's going on in this case.
Now, investigators are obviously looking into this situation. How likely is it that these hackers will be caught?
Well, that can be challenging sometimes. I guess if they're overseas, if the hackers are outside of the U.S., that could be nearly impossible. That gets far more complex, where you have to work situations with the Department of State and try to extradite those individuals back to the U.S. for trial. So if it's in the U.S., that could be a little easier based on the ability for the FBI or the Secret Service to track where those IP addresses came from.
Probably not happening then. All right, now to the really important stuff. What can we do to prevent this from happening to us? Or are we just going to have to live with the constant threat of hackers?
Right. So you can never really get away from the threat entirely, right? So I like to tell people, have we ever gotten away from bank robberies? Bank robberies still occur. We just try to mitigate the threat as much as we can. And I think the two best things individuals can do is, one, have different passwords for all your accounts and make them very complex and change them periodically. And two, use multi-factor authentication when possible. And multi-factor authentication is based on something where you have a token or something you have, such as an RSA token or a text message that gets sent to you from a company, something which is a password, or something you are, which is like a biometric signature. If you have multiple factors involved in authentication, you can severely reduce your threat signature. And Apple, Amazon, a lot of banks actually offer two-factor authentication. That's what I personally use, and I think it's a good way to reduce the threat.
Very, very good advice. Now, is security keeping up with the growing threat presented by hackers? I mean, obviously, Apple's going to be on top of this one going forward, we hope. Or is it just a digital Wild West out there?
Yeah, I think it's a cat and mouse game, just like anything else, and it goes in cycles. I think we're in an up cycle right now where threats have kind of changed and morphed, and we're starting to combat them. I saw something similar back in the 2007, 2008 timeframe. So right now we're in kind of a peak of a threat cycle. But what I would say is that we're looking at hacking these days where individuals are being targeted or companies are being targeted that don't necessarily have the same level of technology and capability as, say, a Fortune 20 or Fortune 50 bank or company that spends a lot of money on this. And hacking the barrier to entry has gone down to such a degree that individuals or small businesses can effectively be targeted. So this is the new paradigm we're experiencing now, and companies are coming up with ways to help out small and medium-sized businesses or even individuals protect their infrastructure better.
Scary stuff. If there was ever a question, don't take racy pictures on your phone. All right. Bob Stasio of Cyber IQ Services, thank you so much for that.
Thank you.